Tuesday, April the 13th. It's a little after 2 p.m. in the afternoon. This is the Energy and Environment Committee special agenda, and there are some items that we will be able to take together. Mr. CLA, I think we can take items 2 and 3 together. Am I correct?
Yes, you can, Madam Chair.
2 and 3 together. And then are there any requests for continuances or consent items?
Our office recommends consent on item number 5. This is an MSRC grant for the purchase of 35 heavy-duty sanitation collector vehicles.
We don't have a quorum, but we'll do that without objection when folks get here. Okay. What other items?
That is it for the items for consent. The rest are to be heard.
All right, and then I think we'll be taking items 7 and 8 together.
6, 7, and 8, actually.
6, 7, and 8 together. 6, 7, and 8 together. All right. Why don't we start first with the commission appointment? Is Mr. Pasquale here?
Actually, we received a communication from Mr. Pasquale that he would request his name be withdrawn from consideration.
All right.
So I actually may want to note and file that request.
All right, note and file. And when we get a quorum, we'll go back and ratify that. All right. Okay, Mr. Koretz wanted to talk about 2 and 3. Why don't we go to item 4?
Item 4 is the report from the CAO and the Board of Public Works relative to agreements with CR&R and potential industries for the processing and marketing of residential single-stream recyclable materials.
Hi. Emilio Rodriguez, State Administrative Office. Blue bin recyclables collected by city sanitation trucks are processed and marketed by contracted material recovery facilities over 6 collection waste sheds. In the report before you, it is recommended that CR&R Incorporated Community Resource and Recycling be selected as the primary contractor and Potential Industries Incorporated as the secondary backup contractor to serve the city's western waste shed. Recommendations are based on results of the request for proposals process that was held in 2009. The city does not provide financial compensation for these contracts. Rather, the city receives revenue in the form of a minimum floor price per ton of materials received at the recycling facilities. The proposed contracts will bring in approximately $1.3 million annually. The 6 waste sheds collectively bring in about $4.4 million through multiple contractors. Revenues are used for post-closure maintenance costs, city-owned landfills, city transfer station costs, and other costs supporting solid resources programs depending on funding availability. Additionally, contractors make a pledge of $50,000 annually to support the city's ambassador program, focusing on contamination reduction and education for curbside customers.
Has the city attorney up here?
I'm sorry?
Is the city attorney here? Okay, I wanted to know if the city attorney has reviewed the proposed contract and the RFP process. Does anybody know the answer to that question?
Yes, the city attorney has signed on the contract. They have reviewed the contract, and they...
Into the mic.
I'm sorry. Jorge Santiesteban, Bureau of Sanitation. The city attorney did review the contract. They signed off on the contract. Prior to that, we went through an extensive RFP process in which 5 proposers proposed. The 2 highest ranked proposers were the 2 that we are recommending a contract with, which are CR&R and Potential Industries. And the rating criteria, the largest portion of the rating criteria had to do with the revenue that was provided to the city. These 2 contracts both will give the city a higher per ton revenue than the previous contract. So we are very happy that this contract we were able to negotiate and enter into an agreement.
Do you know how much revenue the city can expect to receive?
Yes.
So $1.3 million from this contract alone?
Over what period of
$1.3
time?
million annually?
Annually.
For how long?
Per year.
What's the duration of the
Oh.
contract?
It's a 3-year contract with a 3-year renewal option.
Okay, now apparently we received a communication from the lawyers from Best Way Recycling, a bidder who was deemed to be non-responsive, determination that they did not meet a good faith effort requirements, and that determination was found to be incorrect. Can you respond to this allegation or describe the process by which that determination was made?
You want to do that?
Yes, the proposals, out of the 5 proposals, one of the companies did not pass the good faith effort, and it was demonstrated at our board meeting of January 25th. That issue was resolved, and we demonstrated the reasons why that particular proposer had not received all the points necessary to pass the good faith effort.
I guess the codes, covenants, and restrictions for this property require that a recycling facility on Jefferson Boulevard needs to be leased, and I believe it's owned by Best Way Recycling. Now, Best Way Recycling has alleged that no such lease agreement has been made. Now, does this any way affect the ability to fulfill the scope of this contract?
No, currently, the previous contract was Best Ways, and they used to own the facility. Currently, the recyclables are not using that facility. It's a different contractor, and we're using Culver City Transfer Station owned by the city of Culver City. So we are in no way using a facility that is owned by Best Way or any other contractor.
Okay, now, apparently the contract with Best Way expired on January 22nd, 2010. So how has sanitation been managing the collection and sale of recyclables between now and then?
Under the advice of our city attorney, due to the fact that we have other contracts that handle the same type of material, the city attorney advised the Bureau of Sanitation that we could use the existing contracts to handle this existing material.
Okay. Mr. Koretz has joined us. We still don't have a quorum. But those are all the questions that I have, and I'm willing to hold it on the desk. Mr. Koretz, did you have any questions on this item?
Not for now.
Okay. Why don't we hold it on the desk? We'll get one more member. We can go back and
Go forward and approve it then.
move this one. Now, because Mr. Koretz is here, and I know this item is extremely important to him, why don't we jump over to items 2 and 3? And
Thank you very much, and personally, I'll be retiring soon, but I want to thank you for all your support.
you're welcome. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy your retirement. All right.
Right. Items number 2 and 3 are communications from the city attorney and the Department of Water and Power in response to the water main breaks and the Coldwater Canyon truck line break in December 2009 in Studio City.
Okay, so who do we have here to make the report?
Good afternoon, council members. On item number 2, Jill Brivich, Assistant General Counsel.
And we're going to do 2 and 3 together.
Yeah, so 3 is other representatives from the department on the technical side.
Okay, and do we have someone, the person who did the independent report here?
We do.
Okay.
I'm Julie Spake with the Water System of the Department of Water and Power. We have Professor Jean-Pierre Bardet from the USC Mega City Center.
Okay. Why don't we have the professor go first? Since
Thank
we
you.
just cut to the chase on,
As you like.
hopefully he has the answer.
So, good afternoon, council members, for giving me the opportunity to report on the expert review of the water system pipeline breaks in the city of Los Angeles during summer 2009. My name is J.P. Bardet. I'm the chair of the Sonia Stani Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering and also the director of the Central Megacity at the University of Southern California. During the summer of 2009, several high-profile water main breaks occurred in Los Angeles, raising concerns from both the media and the public with respect to the safety and overall conditions of the city's water distribution systems. Several questions were raised, including what caused a sudden increase in water pipeline breaks. Did the Monday, Thursday watering schedule cause particular damage to the city's older pipelines. Where the city's water pipelines being replaced in a timely manner. As a consequence of the public outcry for an explanation, the mayor and city council requested an independent investigation to study the cause of the increase in water pipeline breaks and the overall vulnerability of the city's water supply and distribution network. An investigation team was assembled from multidisciplinary experts in water distribution system as well as other related engineering field. You can see here a few names: Tom O'Rourke from Cornell, John List from Flow Science, Graham Bell from Chief Associates, Don Ballantyne from MMI, a collection basically of experts from the industry and from universities. And also we had JPL represented here by Andrea Doniland. Really, the objective and scope of the study was to provide a third-party assessment of causes of the LAWP water main breaks during summer 2009 and overall vulnerability of the LAWP water systems. We had also had to look at the asset management practices at LAWP. Now, we have to acknowledge a lot of contribution to this study. We deliver actually on April 9, 2010, the reports, a 160-page report which contain our findings and our recommendations. The investigation teams have to thank Ben Ushman Associates, Inc., for administrating the contracts that supported the investigation. We want also to acknowledge many employees from LAWP who collaborated to the investigations. We also want to thank JPL and many professionals from the water industry. Now, I'm not going to read 160 pages of the report. I will summarize for it, council members. And I will use during the presentation the word blowout. Blowout means basically a term which is used by LAWP to describe a pipeline break that eaves and undermines a street and require pavement replacement for at least 100 square feet. Now, we have a little movie here to show you, to illustrate what happened in Los Angeles. It will be a short movie. What you see here is circles represent usual water leaks, and the triangles represent blowouts. We are looking at an animation starting in July 2001, and we are looking at a time window which is about a month. So that's what's happening to a water system in Los Angeles. I'm playing it, I'm only down to 2003. If you're patient, we can go to 2006. Now, it's on and on. Now, corresponding to the animations, this graph represents the numbers of leaks and blowouts that have happened each month since 2001. On average, there is about 125 leaks per month, about 4 per day. The increase in leaks and blowouts have been rather constant over the years since 2001. Each year, there is 1,512 leaks and about 205 blowouts on average. But a closer look at the data reveals that the number of blowouts during the summer of 2009 have doubled compared to the summers of 2006, 2007, and 2008. So what happened in LA in the summer of 2006? Well, what happened is not specific to LA, but it's found in many cities in the United States. The failure of our infrastructures has been well documented by the Infrastructure Reports Card of the American Society of Civil Engineering, which give a D- to our drinking water infrastructure. Now, this graph shows the performance of several water distribution systems, including LA. LA is actually shown in the blue dots here. Do not pay attention to those drops. We only consider this part of the data. The national average is here, about 20 to 25 breaks per year per 100 miles of pipes. The data has been normalized per 100 miles of pipes so we can compare the different municipalities. LA systems perform better than the national average. Some systems perform worse than LA. Some systems perform better than Los Angeles. The investigation team conducted a review of asset management practice for the city's water distribution system. Overall, LADWP appears to be following industry practices in its asset management program and compares favorably with utilities of similar size and complexity. However, our investigation recommends additional analysis on asset management. Now let's go to the core and I want to tell you about the causes of what happened in summer of 2009. LAWP pipeline system is rather complicated. We have over 7,200 miles of pipes, more miles than between Los Angeles and Paris. Founded in 2002, LADWP is the largest municipal utilities in the U.S. In 2007 and 2008, it delivered almost 200 billion gallons of water to more than 4 million residents, which corresponds to an average use of about 144 gallons per person per day. And now, approximately 65% of the 7,200 miles of water pipelines are cast iron, a brittle material that becomes even more brittle when it's embedded in corrosive soils. The rest of the pipelines are made of steel, which is not also a good material, asbestos concrete, and ductile iron, one of the best material. The pipelines are aging. Some of them are more than 100 years old. Cast iron pipes are the oldest pipes. Ductile iron pipes are the most recent. But age itself is not the only factor that causes pipelines to break. In this report, we considered many factors. I'm not going to list them all. We will concentrate only on 4 important factors: ground movement, corrosion, temperature, and pressure. The ground movements have been studied by the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. They use the state-of-the-art remote sensing and GPS technique to assess the effect of tectonic deformations, subsidence, and earthquakes on water pipeline breaks. JPL found that tectonic deformation of the surface of the Earth did not cause breaks during the summer of 2009. Instead, JPL found that the pipeline breaks were associated with small surface deformation changes, which were more likely effects rather than causes. But there is a striking finding. Over 90% of the blowouts, those catastrophic failures observed since July 1st, 2009, have occurred in cast iron pipes that were externally corroded. 90% of the blowouts were observed since 2001 have occurred in cast iron pipes. Corrosion contributed to the pipe wall failure. Corrosion contributed to the pipe wall failure. Pipe walls fail both circumferentially, like these beam breaks, or longitudinally. This undermined the structural integrity of overlying streets above, creating the blowouts and sinkhole that attracted the public attention. In addition to cast iron pipe corrosion, 2 significant factors, water temperature and internal pressure changes, contributed to cast iron pipe failures. Temperature and pressure changes increase stresses in the pipe walls coupled with external corrosion, and this diminish pipe integrity. During past winters, low water temperature have resulted in an increase in breaks. Here we can see that an increase in break in 2007 corresponding to low water temperature in the systems. But that was not the cause in the summer of 2009. Here we are looking at pressure. Pressure at two different ways. We are going to look at pressure transient. So the investigation team led by Flow Science and Pipe Tech, they deployed portable, accurate instruments and audited what was happening in the water distribution system. It measured the heartbeat of the water systems. It monitored the pressure changes at various locations within the systems at a fine enough time scale so it will show pressure transient, those pulses in the systems, and it recorded them. However, during the time of our monitoring, no out of the ordinary pressure transients appear to have occurred. Those pressure transients are also sometimes called water hammers. Slow cyclic variations of water pressure are more likely to have been the factor that contributed to the rush of blowouts and leaks during the summer of 2009. The investigation team findings reveal a connection between the city's water rationing program and the increase in pipe breaks during the summer of 2009, especially with cast iron pipes. So we show here that months, and that will be the cyclic variation of pressure at different points in the systems. We have shown the average, the minimum, and the maximum. This is a zoom. As you can see here, that we have some spikes which are going down. The pressure has decreased in some days. So we started the watering system in June 1st, 2009, and this has resulted on the days of the week, the Mondays, on the Thursdays, at low pressures. These will be Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And you can see every Mondays and Thursdays, we have low pressure in the systems. So at various locations in the AWP water distribution system, the water pressure dropped significantly on Mondays and Thursdays after the beginning of the water rationing program on June 1st, 2009. Those water pressure drops on these days were caused by an increased water flow during the watering of lawns. As a result, the cyclic levels of water pressure increased and accelerated the metal fatigue failure of aged and corroded cast iron pipes. Now, if you allow me, I'm going to demonstrate what is fatigue by using a paper clip, a regular paper clip. If you have one, you can borrow one of mine. This clip can support a lot of little cycles of small amplitude.
Can you hold it up higher? Can you hold it up higher so people can see?
So small cycles of fatigue will not fail. So I can apply a lot of little cycles. However, if I start applying large cycles, it will break. This is metal fatigue. As you increase, so the clip can support many cycles of small amplitudes, but fails only after a few cycles of larger amplitudes. The investigation teams conclude that the sudden changes of water pressure in the systems attributable to the water rationing programs had a negative impact on cast iron pipes with lower fatigue resistance, especially corroded cast iron pipes. Our recommendations. For the summer of 2010, the investigation team recommends avoiding abrupt variation in water pressure as much as possible. To avoid increased level of water main breaks, it is recommended that LAWP alters its existing water rationing programs so that it evenly distributes the variations of water pressure over time and avoid sudden drops of water pressure. For instance, LAWP could devise water rationing so that properties with odd and even street numbers engage in watering their lawns on different days. This solution would reduce sudden drops of water pressure and would impose less stress on corroded cast iron pipelines. My last slide. Starting in 2010, the investigation team recommended that LAWP invest in research aimed at exploring and further refining our understanding of the factors affecting pipeline failure. Develop tools that better quantify, understand, and predict system failures, and improve risk-based asset management of LAWP facilities. The investigation team also recommends that LAWP considers a more efficient pipe replacement program as part of its asset management plan and improved its field inspection techniques. It recommends an aggressive pipeline replacement program that reduces the effect of aging and increase vulnerability over the long term. Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
One quick question. The wall surrounding the cast iron pipe, what's the wall made out of?
The wall of the cast iron pipe it's cast iron. It has a lining which is a mortar lining.
And the lining is made out of what?
Mortar.
Oh, okay, it's just basically cement.
Cement, yes.
Cement, okay.
That's for
And so if I understand what you're saying, then you have a combination of the drop of water pressure, corrosion of pipes, even though the cast iron is the strongest of the metals, but it is also the oldest in the system, correct?
It's the oldest and the most brittle nowadays, and the most one of the most corroded. Not the most, but the steel is actually more corroded.
So am I correct that it's not as much movement of the earth as it is the drop in water pressure, and coupled with the corrosion and the deterioration of the lining that causes the pipe to perhaps break or implode or shift?
You are correct, except it's external corrosion, not internal corrosion. It's a corrosion coming from the soil. The lining is still intact, but our corrosion starts from the outside.
Okay. So if the corrosion starts with the outside, then we have a twofold problem. Now, one, it seems that we can correct systemically if we follow your recommendation, and if your analysis is correct by doing odd number, even number. If that's correct, then that should correct the water pressure issue.
If we do a more even distribution of water usage, it will decrease the pressure drops, and then it will decrease the stresses, those big stress variation on the pipes, and will reduce the break.
But it doesn't eliminate the issue of the pipes themselves.
It doesn't.
Okay, so one, I guess what we need is an overall, and I will probably have to get this from the department and perhaps with your help, where they stand with respect to their efficiencies and their pipe replacement program. And I think it's a timely discussion to have now, given the conversation we're going through on their budget and on the issue of their liquidity and things like that. So do you have a way that you might recommend that we get to, I guess, an assessment of where they are in terms of their pipe replacement program, what they've done to date, how much more they have to go, and where that falls within their asset management plan, and if there's any possibility that we can attach a projected dollar figure to that so that we know what we will have to spend to complete this over the next 5 years?
Well, what I would like to say is that I understand that the LAWP has started their asset management program not very long ago.
Uh-huh.
And I know it's ongoing right now. And we had some interaction with their team, and we suggest strongly that they use this analysis as a base to build their new asset management programs.
Okay, let me ask the Chief Legislative Analyst's office if I can get you to draft a motion for introduction tomorrow, requesting the Department of Water and Power to come in. And it's good that they're just starting, because then there won't be that much information to compile. Pipe replacement program, 5 years, what they project in terms of cost, where this falls within the context of their asset management plan. Basically, how much work do they need to do in terms of miles? Not only in terms of miles, but I also want to know with respect to geography too, because I think that many of these blowouts were north of Sunset and heavily clustered in the valley. Am I correct about that?
You have complete figures in the report which shows the distribution. They were in the valleys, and they were also in various parts of the systems. But there were a couple of points where they were concentrated. If you have your reports in front of you, I can point you.
Okay.
It certainly seemed like all the biggest ones are in the 5th Council District,
Yeah.
so I certainly noticed them.
Yeah, he had a hard time. Well, that's okay. I mean, I just want this to be done because as we move forward in our budget discussions and planning ahead and, heading into this ratepayer advocate discussion, and also looking back at money that has been spent on past rate increases, I think we ought to just lock in on this now. One other quick question I have for you. You refer to improved field inspection techniques. Do you have some recommendations that you can make to us on how the field inspection techniques should be improved, where they are lacking or where they need to be augmented?
Well, we are writing actually at this very moment a proposal with JPL to use remote sensing, using satellites, all kind of airplanes, GPR, ground penetrating radar, to probe and sense water moisture in the ground, which may be the result of leaks. There are also all kind of new devices which are available from the industry, such as smart balls. A ball which will travel through the pipe like a fish and will have a little ear and listen basically to the leaks and will position the leaks. So there are a lot of various techniques available from the industry which should be further explored by the department.
Okay. All right. And then when will you complete that study?
We are submitting proposals, and we're trying to engage the department to work with us on these issues of improving these inspection techniques.
And have you been successful in engaging the department?
I think so.
By what date will you know for certain that you have been successfully engaged?
If the National Science Foundation decide to fund a proposal. So we are submitting this proposal to the National Science Foundation in collaboration with JPL. So it's a risk. We don't know if we're going to get funded. But I will also encourage maybe we start a pilot study with the department to improve those field inspection techniques.
Okay, why don't we, Mr. CLA, why don't we make a note that we can check back with you in, say, 60 days to see if your proposal, what the status is, and also I'd like to ask the department to, that sounds wonderful, but we can't wait for that. If you can add to that motion that I want to introduce tomorrow, I want the department to come back and report to us on what improved field inspection techniques they intend to introduce and timeframes, what additional training is necessary, and the costs associated with that too. Okay, Mr. Koretz, why don't you? We have some cards, but I think you need to ask your questions first.
Well, first, on this subject, do you have a sense, talking with the DWP, that they get the cost benefit of identifying the most brittle and likely to break pipes, and rather than saying, oh my God, this is going to cost us more money and we can't afford it, that at the end of the day, by not having these explosive and costly breaks that affect neighbors and the city, that it makes more sense to be proactive and jump on these and eliminate them and replace them?
Your question is about the cost-benefit ratio, to see if AWP has a good understanding on how much can be saved by replacing the pipes.
And do you sense a willingness and an openness to address this problem aggressively?
Each time I visited AWP, I felt a full collaboration, and I know that they have a team now which is looking at improving the asset management practices. So we can target actually minimizing risk to our population, or economic risk, economic losses, or even possibly casualties created by this pipe break. So I know the department is engaging in these practices, and they are, I think, ongoing.
And are they already starting to plan for changing their requirements in terms of when we ask our residents to water so that it can be done in a more safe way?
I don't know if the department has yet contemplated a change in the water rationing plan. That I don't know of.
And will it make a difference if we take the 2 days a week and just split them odd and even, or would we be better off making it a 3-day-a-week program so that every day there's a certain amount of watering going on?
I think there are many scenarios which could be used. The bottom line is you want to create a more even usage of water so you don't have those sudden drop of water pressure at a given time of the day in your watering system. You want to minimize the stresses. So we suggested only one scheme, but there may be other schemes. We suggested a scheme which has been used in other cities, but there are other schemes which can be contemplated by the department.
But clearly, whatever creates the most even use of water would be the least likely to cause more damage.
You're right.
As well as replacing the most obvious pipes that are the most likely to go.
Absolutely.
Now, I don't know if my other questions are appropriate now on the specifics.
Go ahead, because after this, Mr. Garcetti is also here for the record, and then if Mr. Garcetti has questions, and then we're going to go through the cards.
Yeah, my questions would be around the Coldwater Canyon blowout and how that was handled by claims adjusters and the city and DWP. So do we have the right people here to answer those questions?
Yes. Again, Joe Brivich, Assistant General Counsel for the department. In February of this year, we had provided joining me is J.R. White, our Chief Claims Agent for DWP. In February of this year, we had provided the council members with a status letter of the claims that had been submitted on the cold water blowouts. And there have been some revisions to that since in the 2 months that have passed, so I'd kind of like to break that down for you and so that you have an understanding of the volume of claims that we were dealing with. There were 108 distinct claims that were filed. Of those 108, 41 claims were filed by homeowners, 25 claims were filed by 23 claims were filed by businesses, and 44 claims were subrogation claims, which is basically where the insurance company has already made a payment to the homeowner or the policy owner, and now they filed a claim against DWP to seek recoupment of those monies. With respect to the 41 homeowner claims that have been filed, 25 of those claims have been settled, 3 have offers outstanding, and 11 are awaiting further documentation. 2 have been denied. Of the 2 that were denied, they were denied because the insurance company paid out in full, including the deductible, so there was no value to be had. So if you look at the homeowners' claims from a percentage standpoint, out of all the homeowner claims that have been presented, just at a raw number, 60% have been settled. If you look at the ones where the documentation has been completed, the amount settled is roughly 83%. That 80% range tends to be consistent for the business and the subro claims. The subro claims sometimes take a little longer because the insurance companies just put you on notice that they're in the process of paying out their folks, and they'll get back to you when they have a full amount. But that's where we are with respect to the homeowner claims.
Now, the pipe that blew up on Coldwater, was this the first time that it blew up?
That I don't know.
Is there somebody here that knows the history of?
I'm Julie Spake with the Department of Water and Power. That is one of the original 1914 pipelines bringing water across the valley floor to distribute it within the valley and then to send it across the mountains to the city side. That pipeline has had breaks in it previously in different segments. At that particular spot, that's the first time it's had any trouble. I believe some years back there may have been a break closer to the river itself in a spot right within the river area.
So any reason why it wasn't replaced when previous breaks occurred?
It's many miles long. It's a very large pipeline, and it goes through the middle of the valley. It is not an easy one to replace. We have been working on it. In fact, that segment that did break was scheduled, designed, and all in the works to be, and now we are working on replacement of that.
Any reason why we didn't try to replace it when it was opened up when this blowout occurred?
At that particular spot, we did not replace it. It was repaired because we wanted to replace it with a larger piece. We had another alignment planned out, and we felt that we could get a good, solid repair in that place, get everything back filled in and covered up, and the street, frankly, back in working order so that we could do an organized replacement down the line. And that's scheduled and ongoing.
Now, my great concern is there are a few claims where people are unhappy and don't feel they've been handled appropriately. Why has it taken so long to process some of the claims that are still outstanding? And I should say first, this happened on September 5th. We had a couple town halls on September 9th and 22nd to make sure that everybody got handled appropriately. And it's kind of shocking or even embarrassing that there are still cases where people are quite unhappy at how they've been handled and feel that the department hasn't really made the effort to settle these claims appropriately.
Quite frankly, Councilman, in the majority of those instances, it's because we have not received the documentation that was requested. We have worked with your office in that process, and we simply have not.
Excuse me.
We simply have not received the documentation that has been requested in many instances.
Well, it seems to me, I mean, this isn't like a claim where there's a question of whether someone filed a workers' comp claim and whether they initiated something fraudulent. I mean, these people were put upon, in several cases, their lives were pretty much devastated and they were forced out of their homes. And I'm not sure we fairly can anticipate that everyone's going to keep receipts on everything that they own in anticipation of some sort of disaster. And it seems to me that we haven't handled this with adequate sensitivity towards the real world situation.
Nor do we anticipate everybody, council member, to have a receipt for every single item. But for instance, in one situation, we have an individual who has submitted over $200,000 of expenses for personal property. Many of them are items in excess of $5,000 that are less than a year old. We would expect in that circumstance that there is some documentation substantiating the value of those items. So while we do not anticipate everybody to have a receipt from something that they purchased 10 years ago, certainly if it's a high-end item that was recently purchased, we would anticipate that there would be some documentation supporting the value of that item.
Well, I don't know. I've been a claims adjuster myself, and from what I've seen, I don't think we've responded adequately to this.
Would you mind if I made a suggestion? Because this reminds me of what the city had to do after we had the Northridge earthquake, and maybe Mr. Koretz would be, I'm sure you would be willing to host a day-long, I guess, working session with the Department of Water and Power at a location that's convenient, maybe in some proximity to where the break occurred, and then have all of the appropriate Department of Water and Power people out there and ask the department to do a mailing into the community to bring people out, so anybody who has outstanding claims that haven't been processed or they feel that they're stuck, or basically have an on-site processing center for a day, see how it goes, see how many additional claims you can clear up and resolve and finish. If maybe you might want to do that instead, and we can get this taken care of.
Councilman, there are only 11 individuals that have the documentation that we're awaiting the documentation from them. So it's a,
Maybe you can have a meeting with the 11 people who are still outstanding?
If I could figure out some way to get some leverage to actually make some of this stuff happen, because my look at this is, I'm looking at a system that I feel is overly bureaucratic and not sensitive enough to the people that have been harmed, and I'd be looking at some leverage to get them to do the right thing, except the enemy is us. It's the city and the DWP.
Well, no, I'm not trying to cast, I'm just trying to think of a way. I didn't realize it was 11 outstanding claims, which means that the department could give those 11 outstanding claims some extraordinary attention. I would expect them to, if that's what you wanted to do. It's your district, so obviously I'll defer to you.
I'd love to do anything I can. Part of it is, in some cases, they're damaged items, whereas I understand that the department hasn't been willing to go out and look at them to actually see the damage and assess it. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I mean, there are pieces.
Well, what I was thinking is if you had a team out there, and we do it in the area where the break occurred, when we did the FEMA field work, you have people out there, they set up a table maybe in elementary school, bring the building and safety inspectors, you bring everybody out there who needs to be out there, and they take care of it on the spot.
And they actually look at what they need to look at. Hey,
that's part of the resolving it on the spot.
But I'm open to anything. It sounds a little bit like what we tried to do in September to get everybody talking to each other and resolve it, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, we had, again, with respect to the individual homeowner claims, where the documentation has been provided, we're in an 83% success rate on settlements. The difficulty comes down to a few of these, and council member, we met with some individuals in your office in December that said they were going to provide, that they had and would provide initial documentation. We haven't received that. A member of your staff met with somebody in February 22nd, and sent us a note saying we met with them, they're going to provide the documentation. Since that time, we received one receipt. And again, we're not talking about $20 items. We're talking about items that are several $1,000s and relatively new. And when we're dealing with public funds here, when we present, these items go, because of the size of the claim, they go to the board, and we need to document the settlement recommendation that we're recommending. So let
me give you an example of one of your 83%. I know there's a couple, Mr. and Mrs. Sholdar, who submitted a claim for $15,000. They were offered $1,000, which they refused. Ultimately, they settled for $3,500. And they told us that they did it because they couldn't handle the stress. They were old. They felt like they were treated like criminals, and it wasn't worth it to them. So even though they felt they were due $15,000, and they very well may have been, they quit because of how insensitive we were in the process and took what they could get. I wouldn't consider that a success. It just means we found a way to close the case. In some cases, people have so much money on the line that they can't afford to say, oh, this is too stressful, I'm going to pass on $800,000 of a claim. They've got to follow it through, but they're not getting anywhere, and they're very frustrated, and they should be, and we're frustrated too.
Councilman,
I'm embarrassed because this looks like my screw-up, and we're trying to do everything we can to make these people whole.
We are always sensitive to these cases because of their nature and the scrutiny that they're subjected to if they go forward as inverse condemnation cases in court, and the high exposure that we have. So we're always confident in the settlement offers that we make. But for instance, just because somebody makes a claim of a certain value doesn't mean that the claim is worth that much. In one of the outstanding instances, people are making claims of several $100,000 for items for speculative damages that are not reimbursable. So, somebody can submit a claim for $1 million, but that doesn't mean that the item's worth $1 million. So we are very sensitive in how we handle these because they're inverse condemnation cases, and we have tremendous exposure if we go to court and lose. And on general, our water system cases, we settle about 97% of our cases. So in these outstanding instances, if we had some responses to the documentation requests that we have outstanding, that would go a long way to resolving these matters.
Well, I'd be open to suggestions. I think we could try for some variation of what you're suggesting and see if that gets us any closer to.
If it works for you.
I think it's a great
Because I've seen it
concept.
done one, you'd have to, the department should bear the expense of doing the mailing to whatever census tracts that you feel were most affected by the blowout, or where you know the outstanding claims still continue. And the department should have whatever appropriate personnel that you need to have, and they should be there for a period of time that's long enough for not only senior citizens to be able to come in, bring what they've got, but for people who work, so that they can come in and bring in whatever they need to have you look at, an elementary school or someplace where there's obviously photocopy machine, so that you can take care of it on site or bring your own equipment with fax machine. Much the way we maybe set up an off-site council meeting, so you have that equipment there to be able to process people's information, and
Also, perhaps the willingness to commit that if there are items in storage, they're willing to go and see the items and actually
maybe they
look
can
at
bring one
everything.
field inspector with them who can go out and do the off-site, with a camera, obviously, or a video or whatever. And if the people are really elderly and have difficulty with mobility issues, that, you bring somebody who can actually go to the site, but your base camp is wherever you choose for it to be, and see if you can't resolve this.
That issue is, the issue of seeing items is actually a relatively simple one, because it's really not a question of looking at the items, but having an establishment of the valuation of.
Well, here's something that you can do, because I know we did this after the earthquake too. If you have items, especially the large ticket items that were recently purchased, even a year, 2 years, if the person can at least remember where they bought it, you can always go back to that store or retail outlet. They can either try to retrieve the record, and you can make that suggestion, or you can make that suggestion.
Councilwoman, we've made that suggestion.
Or they can reconstruct, they can often reconstruct the records for the customer.
We've made that suggestion, because we don't require that you have the exact receipts, a credit card statement for that item,
No, I understand.
So
and sometimes when somebody's elderly, that can be an overwhelming process, and I guess that's where we would come in as council office and council office staff, to be the bridge between the department and if there's a situation like that where you mentioned this elderly couple and they just gave up because it was just too overwhelming, that's where we come in, to fill that, to bridge that gap, to help them, maybe to call the store and say, Mr. and Mrs. Doe bought a refrigerator 2 years ago, and they were damaged in the blowout, for lack of a better word, on Ventura Boulevard last year, and they need to reconstruct the purchase of their, washer and dryer, and we just need some type of, would you take an estimate?
If we had it from the proper source, sure, but with some of these instances, we also have people who say we have the receipts, we're just not providing them. So.
Okay. Yeah, no, I understand. But have you also documented, for the people who say they have a receipt and they didn't turn it into you, have you then followed up with them to say, document for their benefit and for your benefit and for the council office benefit, okay, look, we're still waiting for your receipt regarding XYZ. It is still outstanding as of this date. Would you please turn it in? Has the department done something like that to close the loop?
On certain individuals, yes. On certain individuals who say the information is still coming, we're awaiting that, especially once at the council office is.
Well, if I were in your position, if I were in the department's position, I would document every movement, whether you got the information or not. Say, as of this date, Mr. Smith, we have not received your receipts for the following items, and we cannot resolve this case until we receive this information. So then, Mr. X or Mr. Z, Ms. Z knows we still got to get this information, and then you might add in some language about, and if you aren't able to obtain the receipts, we suggest the following options with respect to documentation that the department will accept. And I've been through this before when we've had transformers explode in the southern part of the district and the contents of people's refrigerators have been destroyed. And I know that there is some level of flexibility in what the department can and will accept because, it's even harder to reconstruct
And
how
we have
much
that,
heck the refrigerator.
we have that same level of flexibility here. For instance, with the refrigerator claims, if somebody comes in and says, I had $50 worth of food in my refrigerator, we don't require them to go out and reconstruct $50 of food. But if somebody comes in and says, hey, I was having a dinner party tomorrow night and I had $1,000 of shrimp and lobster in my refrigerator, then we have a different level of scrutiny. And that's sort of the same situation that
All I'm
applies here.
suggesting is, one, council office is the bridge between, the community and the department and can help the ratepayer or the constituents chase whatever documentation they need to chase or recreate or obtain, as long as the department has done all that it needs to do to document and you've only got 11 cases, I guess. So that should be pretty easy for you to meticulously document what is outstanding so that you can bring all of these cases to closure.
We'll certainly work with you on that.
And I haven't been that close to the specifics. I've just heard some of them in passing. My deputies have done more of the day-to-day work, but I have seen, for instance, washed out receipts, because the problem is the receipts are in the same place that's been flooded. So it's in one case, at least, I know there's not a real ability to provide them because I've seen them. They're very difficult, if not impossible, to read. There also may be a situation where you have some large pieces of furniture that are in storage, and there may not be the receipts, and unless you actually go out to see the pieces, then you know exactly at least what they are, and then if they go out and go to a furniture store and get an estimate of what those sell for, you'd be able to be closer. But if you don't go out to see them and there's no receipts, it's like they're making it up. They could be saying anything without someone actually verifying what the items are.
In most of those instances, we verified, we photographed the items, and again, it's an issue of documentation. So when we have, for instance, a claim for upwards of $15,000 for draperies that are less than 2 years old, we would anticipate that there would be some receipt, or that you could go back, some documentation for that amount, or that you can say where they were purchased. So there's certainly a way to get there.
One would hope, and I look forward to working with you and having my office try one more time to see if we can bring this to closure. I don't know if your staff has any experience with this. You might be able to offer us a little assistance as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And the other thing that makes us a little different from the refrigerator instances also is, we're talking about claims that are over $100,000, and so it's still subject to board approval and everything else.
Well, we've had a number of disasters here in the city, 1992, the Northridge earthquake, so we've got a lot of experience, and then, I have a lot of experience, so we'd be happy to help your staff figure out how to set this up, and then if you can, we can help you figure out, along with the department, which team members should come out, and you're going to have to find the location, because obviously you know better than anybody, and let's see if we can't finish this.
Certainly work with the councilman's staff to do that.
Great.
And so far in the past, Sportsman's Lodge has done that. Perhaps they'd do it again. They're in the exact right location.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, we've got a number of cards, and I'm going to call people up, so and thank you, Professor. This won't be the last time we see you,
Thank you.
unfortunately for you.
It's my pleasure.
Get steady.
Yeah, excellent. I'm going to recommend that we actually ask the department, and Professor, if you're available, to come back in 30 days to respond to the independent third parties' recommendations and the need for the department to develop an alternative water rationing plan that reduces water main breaks. So if you can come back in 30 days, that would really be great, and we'll have the department's response. In the meantime, I'd like to call some people up to the table, and then we're going to get to the ratepayer advocate.
Thank you.
I'll call them four at a time. First, Mr. Patsouras. I can't read the first name, but it looks like the last name is Safaradi. Is there a Mr. or Miss Safaradi? Sefaradi? Sefaradi. Kunor Chopren and Michael Yagahabi? Michael Yagahubi? Okay. Come on up, sit down.
Miss Perry, just 1 minute for now. 1 minute on the clock.
Okay, do you have the clock?
Yeah, ready.
Yeah, that's fine. 1 minute, yeah, okay. Mr. Patsouris.
Honorable members, if you recall, it was reported that for the department to reach the goal of replacement of pipes, and the goal should be questioned, at the rate of replacement, according to the department, it would take 20 to 30 years, accepting their goal. I would like to suggest, at your request to the CLA, that in addition to the 5-year time limit of the work done in-house, an aggressive effort should be done in addition to in-house work, outsourcing. Let me repeat, outsourcing, because Ranton Deaton documented that work done by outside forces cost 60 to 70% of in-house, and at 70 to 80% less time.
Thank you. Ms. Sefaradi?
Yes.
Okay. You're next. Well,
She's my wife.
she can speak for a minute, and then you can speak for a minute. Do you want to speak?
Sure. I just don't know where to begin. We are just so saddened by the way we've been treated by the city and by DWP. And the whole thing has been just such a disaster for our family, for our kids. We lost our home overnight. And it has just been amazing to me. I mean, the coldness and just the way we've been treated, it's been horrendous. It's been beyond anything that I ever thought of the city to be or the DWT to be, and nobody stepped up, unfortunately, to help us out, to take blame, or to do anything. And we just want our home back. We want to go back to our home.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Kunur?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Koretz, for bringing up this issue at this meeting. Just mirroring what they're saying, we're one of the 2 properties which have been affected most by the Studio City water main break, and have a large amount of claims, a large amount of money at issue. They talk about how 83% of the claims have been settled, but I'd like to know what that is in dollar value, because we, again, have the largest claims and not one dime has been given to us. Just an example, I guess, of kind of the unreasonableness, and we have been questioned. We are being treated basically like criminals in this, and it's been almost 8 months. And again, I can't even start construction on the property because one example is we're paying a mortgage on the property, which is about $5,500 a month, and we found a rental property. Now, it's myself, my brother, his wife, and a 2.5-year-old son. We lived in a 3,600 square foot home, which was affected by this water main break. The DWP wanted to put us in some like 2-bedroom apartment rentals. We chose to find our own rental. We fortunately have family members in the area. They have an 8,000 plus square foot house. They said, fine, give us $4,500 a month. And they basically let us stay there. We've been paying them. We have canceled checks. We've shown those checks to the DWP, and we haven't been reimbursed. So there are different items that we're seeking reimbursement for. That's just one piece of it, and we have not even received reimbursement for rental. We're paying over $10,000 a month. It's been 8 months. That's over almost $100,000. Just an example of the unreasonableness. So,
Thank you. Mr. Yaghubi?
Yes, Ms. Perry. Thank you for bringing up the fact that they should contact us and ask about receipts. But Ms. Perry, we've given them receipts. I've met with Paul Koretz's office. We've talked to the deputies. We've come up with appraisals. We've come up with estimates, and I have sent them to Joseph Brevich's office, emailed them over and over and over again, asking for updates. Yet nothing comes through. My attorney has emailed, proof emails. Nothing comes through. And, you know, I wish that just context was only the situation. I have over $400,000, 300 some odd thousand dollars from home, from my landscape, from my exterior, from my front lawn, and I sent them, what about that? They are just focusing on our contents. What about, you know, I have home issues, gardening issues, landscape issues. I have more than 2 inches of mud in my backyard. They're just ignoring that. What about all of that issues? They're going on and on about why do we tear out flooring. His office is, you know, pointing to our fingers and saying we made our house uninhabitable over and over again. Even when I brought it up to Joseph's attention, they still call us, harass us, saying, why did you pull up your flooring? Why did you tear out your house? I have environmental reports. I have reports, comments from the environmental company saying, rip out your floors. My house had high levels of E. coli bacteria. And I have given these reports to him, to Paul Koretz's office, yet they ignore that. And all they're saying is, we are waiting for estimates for documentation on your contents. Well, what about all these other issues?
Okay.
What about all of that? We have met with Paul Koretz's office. He's gone above and beyond to meet with us, to come up with documentation. But nothing.
All right, well, let's see if he can do it one more time and push this through. Cindy Mintz, Susan Levine, Barbara Monahan Burke, and Dr. Clyde Williams. Cindy Mintz.
We're discussing, Susan Levine and I are discussing a slightly different matter regarding the DWP, so I don't know if you want to finish.
Is it on this item?
It's on the amendment number 3. They said 2 and amendment 3, I believe.
If it's regarding these items that we're discussing now, you can discuss it
It's about a
now.
claim that was denied by
Okay.
the DWP.
A shortage.
Okay.
I'll try to make it brief. I'm sorry, I thought we had 2 minutes. So my name is Cindy Mintz, and my family lives on Kester Avenue in Sherman Oaks. On December 7th, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, there was a loud buzzing that came over our speakers and intensely light brights that popped up. All of a sudden, there were popping sounds and smoke started coming from our light switches in our entry hall. We called the fire department, and they shut off the electricity to our block, including our neighbors who were also running from their homes at the same time. DWP workmen indicated that the power pole between our home and the home directly south of us was the source of the problem. They said that the 110-volt line had split, causing 220 volts of electricity to go into our homes. The damage cost about $25,000 to our home. The DWP has declined that, citing Mr. J.R. White, the DWP chief claims agent, wrote, quote, "The DWP as a public entity is not subject to strict liability," unquote. However, my counsel has informed me that Mr. White's statement is not correct. In the case of Pierce versus the Pacific Gas and Electric Company, the court expressly held that electricity is a product and not a service, and as such, public utilities such as the DWP are liable to their customers. I feel like we've been completely dismissed and ignored by the DWP. I don't understand why I have to hire an attorney to go after them. We've lost countless items, including our double convection oven, alarm clocks, coffee makers, answering machines, our fireplace that heats our bedroom, our handheld phones, our lights in our stairwell, our low voltage lights in our kitchen, sockets in our master bathroom. But this has been unresolved since December. It's 6 months that we've gone without anything other than a denial from them.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay,
That's
my last
Yes.
statement, I'm sorry. The power surge caused by the DWP has contributed to unmerited physical and emotional stress to our family. I know it seems trivial to some of these other cases here, but to us, the loss has truly been seismic. They have taken no responsibility for this catastrophe. We are taxpayers, and we are customers of the DWP, and we should not have to retain a lawyer to resolve this kind of issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Levine?
Okay, well, it's a similar incident. It was on December 7th. There were small popping noises, then a louder sound as the power went out throughout the house. It was followed by loud electrical buzzing, smoke in the house, and a series of explosive noises. The fire department came, and the DWP arrived and rewired the connections from the outside poles to the house. Later, we would discover the dishwasher, clothes dryer, television, computer, and various other essential appliances were no longer working. The Time Warner cable people told me that water often gets in through the wires when they are not properly maintained. This was a huge financial hardship for us. How can the DWP not be financially responsible for this electrical incident? Why should we have to pay for these totally unforeseen and preventable damages? Not once has the DWP offered any apology or explanation, nor they have done anything to prevent this from happening again. They're not out there maintaining the wires. The letter denying our claim said that this malfunction occurred to equipment that is usually reliable, different from the letter that Cindy received. Well, it wasn't reliable this time. It was a dangerous situation, and citizens can't possibly be responsible for faulty or badly maintained wiring on city-owned poles or trees. Every time it rains, we worry that a similar incident might occur and that the new appliances that we were forced to purchase might also be destroyed. Surely the DWP is responsible, and we are due compensation for our losses.
And my understanding is there are 4 or 5 families that were similarly impacted. Everything electrical blew out, and unlike this case where the DWP is at least making an effort to deal with it, in this case they've never acknowledged their existence as far as I can tell.
Maybe you can wrap their complaints into the outreach field work that you're going to do for the people who are affected by the explosion and blowout of the pipes, because they're similar issues. And
that would be great if we can get their attention at the same time to handle them appropriately. That's a great
DWP
suggestion.
has completely dismissed us, as our homeowners insurance has all declined us.
Well, you have your councilman here, and he's going to put something together so that you can bring the resources right into the neighborhood and to see if you can deal with it directly, and to have him there to help you bridge that gap.
Thank you.
Barbara Monahan Burke, and then Dr. Williams.
Barbara Monahan Burke, Studio City Neighborhood Council Board Member. We do hear about these problems with claims, and I want to go back to something that Councilmember Garcetti said at one of these meetings. We are the ratepayers, and we own the DWP. So we expect more of the DWP. We want them to do their work properly and to be civil to people and do it promptly. So I thank you, Councilmember Koretz, for taking this up. This was the first big blowout, the one in Studio City. It affected us for a long time, and that's all I need to say. It has to be taken care of now. No more excuses for these any workers. These people have to be treated well and compensated. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Williams?
Just clarification, is this for both 2 and 3, or
Yes.
just?
Yes.
Oh, okay. What can you expect? I've been a DWP liaison for LA 32 Neighborhood Council as a board member for almost 2 years. And bait and switch, avoidance, total lack of credibility on the part of DWP to the ratepayers, to neighborhood councils, and to many other people. The claims are just a reflection of that. The easiest way is don't answer. Hey, that avoids the problem until somebody has the guts to take it to court. So, regarding the number 3, please put the entire report online and provide access to the references and all the materials that were used in it. Because 30 years ago, I was listening on stethoscopes to leaks in Cairo, Egypt, a much older, much poorer maintained system. What was the problem? Lack of maintenance, not the fact that the pressures are going up and down. And by the way, one of them was a riveted steel, so either it was a patch or it wasn't ductile iron. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I just clarify about public access to the report for item number 3? The report was just submitted at today's meeting, and it will be available online by the end of the day.
By when?
End of the day.
End of the day.
Okay. Thank you. Jay Cohen and Chris Rowe. Thank you. And those are our last cards on items 2 and 3. Then we will go to the ratepayer advocate item. Jay Cohen?
Chairperson Perry, appreciate you hearing our story. Joseph Brodovich sat up here and talked a bunch of nonsense. The bottom line is they've treated us like garbage. You know, they talk about how many of these claims they've settled, but they've offered everybody 6 to 10 cents on the dollar, and they force people into settlements because they figure they can't take on DWP and that they need the money badly to replace the damage or fix the damage that they caused due to their negligence. The pipe was 92 years old. It exploded. They said it released 1 million gallons of water. It released close to 19 million gallons of water down my block. Okay, they destroyed my house. My guest house has been completely gutted. My pool has been destroyed. I came down with ulcerative colitis because of all the pressure and the stress that these guys put on me, because dealing with him is like dealing with the devil right there, okay? And that's a fact. And I'll show you 30 or 40 emails that went back and forth. My family has breathing problems right now from the house and from all the damage and the corrosiveness of the water that came through, which is a level 3 or a level 4 sludge. I have over $120,000 in personal damage to personal items that we documented. I hired a company to come in. They documented every single item by serial number, by model number. I gave them a comparison of what it would cost to replace today on Google and as well as Yahoo, and they still don't want to hear it. I was on KTLA, KCBS, KNBC. They have recorded the damage to my home. They played it I don't know how many times on television, and I told them they could go out and see all the stuff. It's documented. It's in boxes. It's very well organized. They told me it's not our job to go out and to examine these items. Okay? These people treated my family like garbage. They were disrespectful to me. They were disrespectful to my wife. I don't know if you noticed, but Michael Ugabi's wife is pregnant. They had her move out of their house because their house is completely destroyed, but they couldn't care less. You know, Councilman Koretz was nice enough to hold a town hall at the Sportsman's Lodge. Then we had a meeting at his office individually with these guys, and nothing was accomplished because they couldn't give a crap. Excuse my French, but they couldn't give a crap about the lives that they have destroyed. Okay, all of my children's video games, all of their.
I'm going to wrap this up so that we can.
Yeah, I know a minute's really not very fair considering what they put us
but we have a lot of people who want to speak.
I understand, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate your time. But the fact of the matter is, he's a liar. He sat here making it sound like 85% of the people were settled with, and that's because they offered them 6 cents on a dollar, and they felt they had no choice.
Thank you. Chris Rowe.
Thank you. I am Chris Rowe, and I want to thank you very much for letting me speak today. On this particular issue, what I want to say is this. I understand the need for water restrictions, but based on what your scientist said today, your consultant, I think instead of having the Monday, Thursday, I think we're going to have to seriously, if we're talking about pressure, actually look at maybe a way of doing it 7 days a week watering, but somehow restrict the time, but you've got to understand that what your grass takes is different than what your trees take. So your trees take deep watering and your grass might not take as much. So these are all complicated issues that you have to weigh together. And of course we've got the hotter valley versus so it's not something that you can address like as a blanket, this is what we're going to do for everybody. So I just want you to consider this.
That's why we got the department coming back to respond to us, respond to the report and tell us specifically what they can do to implement these recommendations.
Right, but that's why I just was saying that, and we couldn't do like alternate days, like in other words, 4 days a week, we'll still have a pressure problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Councilman Perry, just real quick, as follow-up, it would be really nice if we had this town hall, so to speak, with Councilman Koretz and with DWP. But Steve Malinowski, who's with DWP, I met with him outside of Paul Koretz's office, and he told me he thought it was disgusting the way that we've been treated. That was off the record.
Okay.
But the fact of the matter is, having another meeting at his office is not going to accomplish anything.
Well, Mr. Koretz, you can work with Mr. Koretz and find a location that is suitable to everybody. He mentioned the sports.
But they have made offers to people and then followed up and went from 6 to 10 cents on a dollar.
Excuse me, if you let me finish. Mr. Koretz has mentioned the Sportsman's Lodge as a possible location.
They could do it at my house, but it's not going to accomplish anything.
Okay, that's fine. Mr. Koretz is a council person for this district, so I'm going to try to be supportive of him in doing this effort one more time to see if we can resolve more of people's issues.
Okay.
Is that what?
And hopefully we will. If we can't, we'll have to find another next step to keep putting pressure on. But hopefully this meeting will be the last one we'll need.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for speaking. All right, so the department's going to come back in 30 days. with their response to this independent third-party report. I hope that the professor can be here with us to assist them in fleshing out whatever they need, and hopefully you can assist them beforehand. And Mr. Koretz, I'll be happy to work with you and your staff to make sure that you have I guess you'd call it a working session with the department to see if we can't assist the constituents in resolving their outstanding claims that resulted from the blowout and from the, I guess you would call it a power surge also, and just put those two together and then deal with everyone's issues at the same time. So we will hold...
Thank you for your help and for holding this hearing.
Yeah, I've been through a lot of disasters, so got a lot of experience. Yeah, okay, one more. All right, so we're going to hold this in committee. You'll be back in 30 days, and now we will go to...
Madam Chair, that's for both 2 and 3, correct?
Correct, 2 and 3.
Both those items? Okay.
Yes. All right, now, we're going to go to the ratepayer advocate. Everybody who needs to be up here for this from the department should come.
Department report first or public comment?
Yeah, just let them get the seat. And then we can all talk. Criticize it, have Perry on this. I'm Perry. Okay, before you get started, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask my colleagues to make a couple of opening remarks, and then we'll get to this. Personally, I'm happy this day is here, because after having gone through this last experience, and I'm sorry you two are here. I wish that the Department of Water and Power representatives who are at the level that Ms. Yancey works for, above Ms. Yancey, your supervisors, were here to hear this and to respond to it, but they're not here. This is what I believe will be a transformative opportunity for us to change the way that the department governs itself. I don't know how else to say it except I can't be eloquent about it. I've had it. I'm sick of it. I can't even get information from the department that I need, and that we have to rely on a third-party consultant to get the truth in many cases is, to me, sort of appalling and ridiculous. And if I'm in that position as an elected official, and I'm saying this on the record so that hopefully your higher-ups will hear this and they will know how serious this is. I feel like a bride on my wedding day, and I'm going to get married to the ratepayer advocate, okay? So, we're just going to get this done, and I want the ratepayer advocate / inspector general, or whatever we decide to do on a consensus basis, to be independent, to be freestanding. I don't want the ratepayer advocate to be under the auspices of any elected official. I hope that as we develop the framework for this position, one of the biggest things that's going to mean something to me is somebody who has some ability to do forensic accounting, because I am sick and tired of hearing that the department has no money when they have a reserve that is extraordinary. The amount of the reserve the department has could help us retire our entire deficit. I'm sick and tired of hearing about the need for an ECAF and the lockbox, and when you ask questions about where and how the money will be spent, you can't get a straight answer. I still haven't gotten an answer from last fall as to how the department has cut its expenses, its operating expenses. I still haven't gotten an answer from when Mr. Nahai was the general manager about the restoration of all the transformers that needed to be restored, going back that far. So I am looking forward to doing this ratepayer advocate. I would love it. I don't know if it'll end up, we'll just do it, or if it'll go on the ballot. But I think either way, it's a big win. And I can't imagine anybody who would oppose this. I can't imagine anybody who wouldn't want this office to be independent. And I'm an elected official, and I don't even want it to be under any other elected official. I want it to be able to be a free agent position to be able to go out and ferret out the truth, ferret out numbers without any baggage of political agenda one way or the other, but to be able to do this so that we finally have numbers that are unfettered, untouched, uncooked, unhidden, revealed to the benefit of the ratepayer. And I'm going to stop right now, because I could rant and rave about this all day long. But I won't, because I'm going to ask Mr. Garcetti if he'd like to say a few words.
Thank you very much. And I do want you to know, Ms. Perry, I am available for weddings. I have a lovely ceremony.
I know. You've
And
done a lot.
I have some ideas. You've done many too.
I have done many too.
But congratulations on your engagement.
Thank you.
I just wanted to show up very quickly, and I'm going to unfortunately have to run due to prior appointments, but to speak about the importance of an independent ratepayer advocate at the Department of Water and Power. I also do want to thank the representatives that are here from the department, and they do a great job with our council. It is a disappointment that we have nobody from senior management here, although count you on management and senior management.
I made it to the list this time.
What?
I made it to the executive
Oh, good.
telephone director.
And then your senior management, we do not have the COO here. We do not have an acting general manager. And it's unfortunate because every utility-paying resident of Los Angeles is a stockholder in the Department of Water and Power. And like any private shareholder, we deserve to invest with confidence. We also deserve to be treated with respect. That would be ratepayers, just as residents. But as the charter described, joint overseers of this department, like any department, proprietary departments are not in some non-governable, immune from democracy place. It seems that one disagreement in one area has led to suddenly, this seems to be indicative of a shutting down of conversation, period. I think that's a very slippery slope, a very dangerous one, and I'm sure this council is more than happy to continue to 245 the regular business of the department until we reestablish that relationship in a respectful way. We're not looking to play politics with this. We're looking to look out for, as I believe 99% of the people at the department are, the folks who live here in Los Angeles. For this to happen, though, I think in the widest sense, it's vital that there's a mechanism for providing transparency and customer input that helps rebuild and maintain ratepayers' trust in DWP's decision-making process. It's wonderful to see the momentum of who backs now a ratepayer advocate. I was happy to have introduced this motion. Mr. Weezer had the idea of an ombudsperson. I've seconded Mr. Smith's Inspector General, and I'll speak to those latter two. And thank you for Ms. Perry for her strength in helping those motions move forward too. But specifically now, when you look at the mayor's support of a ratepayer advocate, when you look at the commission's stated report of a ratepayer advocate, it is even more befuddling that we don't have the very top management here to discuss this. This is where the rubber hits the road. Committees are about this. I don't know if they're going to miraculously come down from a parachute when this isn't the full council, but the whole idea is to have this be working meeting, and we can't. All we can do is give speeches now. So we'll describe what we want. The reason I think this has gathered momentum is people, even inside the department, come to me all the time and say, I would love to have somebody who does this analysis outside of any interference. Because I think there's people who do good analysis at the department, but we all know the way things are presented sometimes becomes politicized, or there are some who have often said to me inside the department, well, I can't make that decision, it's above my pay grade, or the reason something's not there, we have done the work, but we can't present it to you. And that's why we need an independent ratepayer advocate at the Department of Water and Power. We look at a number of ways of being able to do this. I think it's important to give ratepayers a voice at the table. It's not going to be a sole voice, and they're not going to have authority on setting the rates. The commission and the council and mayor have authority to do that. But what they would do is provide some of the transparency and accountability that's been so sorely lacking in the last few weeks and the last few months. The department is at a pivotal point in its future. I say this with love, that this department has a great history and great employees, and it's poised to make major decisions. We need to do that collaboratively. We need to embrace the idea. If you look at the LA Times, for instance, I know it's not the most ascendant institution, but it is an institution that nevertheless had, years ago, New York Times did something similar, had a reader's representative that was hired. It didn't take away from the articles that are written. It's allowed to be a voice of criticism from within, but a fair referee that lets readers know when mistakes are made. If you look at the Inspector General of the LA Police Department, similarly, it's a place for citizens to be able to go and lodge complaints and make sure that it isn't just taken up by a department who might get defensive about, as human nature is, about complaints that happen. And specifically, I think, looking at infrastructure investment, renewable energy, and other major issues in these next few months are going to be critical for this and for a voice for the ratepayers to be there. I spoke with Mr. Smith's staff. I'm very supportive of an Inspector General, and he wanted also communicated in his staff that we see these as parallel things. We don't want them merged, and we don't want either excluded. A ratepayer advocate would be narrowly tasked with looking at rates at the Department of Water and Power and doing analysis and being able to pull in the analysts to do that from both inside and outside, to look at proposed rate increases and give recommendations on that, analysis and recommendations. Inspector General is a longer-term project, and I think that's one that will take even more because that really looks at the overall operations of the department. And I respect that our last general manager said, I am the ratepayer advocate. I wish every general manager would be, but we need to also have a ratepayer advocate that is not the general manager, that is not a council member, et cetera. And if the past few months have taught us anything, I think it's important that we rebuild trust. Don't take it from us, though you do have to under the charter, but take it from the people of Los Angeles, who I think do want to believe in a publicly owned utility. I certainly support that, but I haven't heard as many calls for privatizing or selling off this utility since I've been in office. That's not the right path. The right path is to reestablish trust, to be here in committee, to move expeditiously for an independent ratepayer advocate, either at the department or maybe in the CAO's office. But I agree, and I spoke with Ms. Gruhl yesterday. She is agnostic about whether it would be in her office or not. So when the commission was talking about putting it in the controller's office, she didn't say that was where she wanted it or didn't want it. She'd be happy to take it, would be happy not to have it there. I think Ms. Gruhl has done a great job as our controller, but we need to make sure, as we've seen, a controller's office is an elected office. Having something more like what the police department has with the structure of an IG office, not saying this is an inspector general, is probably the best and most independent place. It would report directly to the commission and to the policymakers, and as such, would finally look out for the ratepayers of Los Angeles. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Koretz.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Well, I thought I was in love with the idea of a ratepayer advocate, but I think Ms. Perry has actually taken it more literally than I have, apparently.
I am.
But I think we're all very excited about the concept. I think there has historically been a lack of trust in the DWP. I can't remember when that wasn't the case. And I think it's structural. I think it's because there's always been a lack of transparency. And this is a step in the right direction to change that. There are a number of steps we all know we have to take, especially those around the ECAF that we've been talking to death, the breaking it apart into its individual parts so we really know exactly what's going on. We aren't hiding things in sort of a morass. And it's very important that we have this ratepayer advocate who's independent, can't be pressured by anybody, and we need to pick someone that has both the qualifications and that clear independence. And the DWP historically, and it still is a mystery to everyone, including some of the people that work in the department, maybe all of them. And we really need to see that change. So I think this is a great step in the right direction. I mean, no insult to the people that are here. We love you, but we would like to see the absolute top management here. And the fact that they're not here is almost expected, and it's almost indicative of the exact problem. Again, trying to avoid accountability and trying to demystify the process, trying to stop us from demystifying the process and actually figure out what our dollars are going towards, what we're spending it on. Is there a plan? There could be a plan that people are hiding. I don't want to be that conspiratorial, but we certainly don't have a long-term plan for energy use or efficiencies or any of the other things that we really need for this department to be a department of the ratepayers and the residents of the city of Los Angeles. So we hope this will be a first step in that right direction. And God forbid, maybe in 5 or 10 years, people will actually love the DWP because we'll have done all the things we need and it won't have the problems that it historically has had.
Thank you, Mr. Koretz, and you can Actually, I'm fine with the fact that they're not here because that enables me to be able to move this committee forward and for us to do exactly what we want to do on behalf of the ratepayers. So by their not being here, to me, they abdicate their role in the decision-making process. So that kind of clears the path for me and the committee members just to move forward without them, whether they like it or not. Okay, so please let them know that. And that's not directed to you. Okay, so, Mr. CLA.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Roth, the operator with the CLA's office. I'm joined by Bill Koenig with the CAO's office. And what we have before you is simply a report that lays out the next steps to proceed on this issue. Of course, there's been a lot of concern in recent weeks with regard to the rate actions taken by DWP and the council and the interaction and so forth. Last week, a series of motions were introduced, about 8 of them, with regard to governance and oversight and reforms of the DWP. It is our opinion and our recommendation that what we do is we take those motions in conjunction with the motions that have been in your committee having to do with ombudsperson, ratepayer advocate, as well as inspector general, and review them all on a comprehensive basis and come back with a comprehensive solution to address the governance oversight issues.
And a way to fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I would suggest looking within the department at the various sources of money. Again, I was at the commission meeting where the bond council submitted a letter regarding the definition of how the debt reduction trust fund could be used. And to my surprise, the language was not as limited as I thought it would be. And since the balance is over $500 million, I would look at that fund and funds similarly situated. I don't know whether we're going to take this through council and then end up putting it on the ballot. Like I said earlier, either way, I think we're going to win and get it done. I'd like to know if you may not have had a chance to do this yet, but these additional reform motions that Mr. Smith and I and others signed last week, you'll add that in as your comprehensive analysis, but I'm assuming you haven't had a chance to analyze them yet.
No, we haven't had a chance to analyze them, but we review them, we see the links, the common links between the original motions as well as, just the government oversight.
And since we are still working with PA Consulting, are they familiar with governance models?
As a matter of fact, we did check with them today on that issue. They said they do have people that can do that as well, so
Okay.
we could inquire.
And do they have capacity to integrate the analysis of different governance models with charter reform?
We'll have to check on the charter reform aspect, although we have our office.
That would be your expertise.
Yeah. And we've also worked with outside consultants that are experts in charter reform issues.
Because ultimately, many of these items, whether they go in one piece or in pieces, separate issues, but we'll see how that works out. They will have to go on the ballot because they require charter changes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And Ms. Yancey, would you have any knowledge, or are you aware, has your board discussed this ratepayer advocate process yet?
Yes, they have. Wendy Yancey, Water and Power, and they actually, at their meeting on March 18th, introduced a motion asking DWP to look into the feasibility of it being situated in the controller's office.
Mm-hmm.
And we were to report back in 90 days on the scope of that particular position, as well as the cost. It was to be an advisory position, cost associated with it, and a mechanism for implementing such a position in conformance with the city charter, et cetera. And that was due back in 90 days. In that 90-day period, though, they also expected us to go out to the community and talk about what we found.
Do you know what their rationale was for putting a ratepayer advocate under the auspices of an elected office?
If I remember correctly, it was because of the auditing factor and the fact that the controller's office actually conducts audits. Even specifically, they conduct a 5-year IEA survey also, so that would give them some information relative to the operational aspects of DWP and then the audit aspect that they already inhabit. So.
Were they at all concerned about setting up a framework that in it was inherently not independent then?
That, I don't recall a discussion about the independence factor, except that it did have some sense of independence because it wasn't situated at DWP, and DWP did not have control, if you will, over the entity.
Okay, well, we'll go through that. To the CLA, do you think it would be more appropriate for the department to link with the CAO and the CLA's process in developing language that will go on the ballot? Are we able to engage them on that level?
I believe so. I believe we can. Of course, it's, if they're willing to do so. But we're happy to work with them to develop this since it will impact our operations.
One other additional question. Do you know yet, and you may not, is there a benefit to having two separate positions versus rolling them into one?
We haven't thoroughly looked into that yet, although we do know when we've looked at just generally the Inspector General option and the ratepayer advocate option is that if there's a desire by the council to have both, it just comes down to the tasks and what you want them to do. I think Councilmember Garcetti brought up earlier that the IG position would be more of an investigatory type position and so forth to review operations and admin, where ratepayer advocate would specifically look at, assisting ratepayers, provide analysis with respect to rates and impacts, kind of like what PA did during the past 6 months. So the answer is yes, we could do both if that's what you choose to do so.
Okay. Mr. Caress, did you have any questions or comments before I start calling folks up?
I don't think I have anything additional. I think you covered it very well.
Okay, and the CAO, did you have any?
The only, Bill Koenig, CAO's office, a little amplifying of what Raphael just said.
Pull the mic closer.
Oh, sorry. Bill Koenig, CAO's office. It is possible that the duties and activities might be different between the Inspector General and the ratepayer advocate in that the IG in looking at issues and auditing would be an ongoing activity, whereas the rate review function might be more intermittent depending on how often there was a proposed adjustment to either the power or the water side. We're just not sure as to what. My personal feeling is the rate advocate would be more of an intermittent basis as opposed to an ongoing continuous one, and would be drawn upon at the time the council or someone else determines there's a need to look at that.
Well, okay, we'll have to talk about that. I see it as more of an ombudsman in some ways, and
it could very well be, but it depends on how the council wishes to craft the specific responsibilities.
And it also can be a position that's not reactionary but anticipatory.
Very true.
Which would indicate a need for a standing position to not only be prepared to advise on an independent basis on market trends across the country, but to look forensically at what the department has done with the rate increases that they've already gotten, and not only look back but look forward. That's my thought.
Yes, there are probably 7 different ways to look at this.
Oh, there's probably 100 ways, but I'm going to push for that.
Understood.
Independence and forensics and forward thinking and helping us to lead people into the future and make sure their money gets spent the right way. I have a number of cards, and I am going to call you up for 6, 7, and 8. And if we could, we also have some public comments, which we'll do after that. We have a lot of cards, so I'm going to give everybody a minute each, starting with Dr. Clyde Williams. And then Chris Rowe again. Chris Rowe. And let's see. Dr. Clyde Williams. She's got a lot of cards in here. So do you, Chris Rowe. Okay, Tony Wilkinson. Tony Wilkinson. Barbara Monahan Burke. Okay.
Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno, Northeast LA, LA 32 Neighborhood Council, DWP Liaison. I don't believe you can fix it this way in any one of the 3. Maybe if you had all 3 put together, independent, because power corrupts, and DWP has a lot of power and can corrupt just by withholding information or providing selective information. Half-truth is the worst lie. So having experienced it for almost 2 years, it's not really possible, perhaps, to do it in a practical, real-time sense. Maybe the easiest way would be to sell off the whole thing, make it a private enterprise, and then the CPUC, which has a very well-experienced ratepayers advocate, could explore its entire book system. So I don't know if, maybe if all three were put together and had independence, they could maybe make it work.
Thank you. Ms. Rowe?
Chris Rowe, West Hills Neighborhood Council, but I'm speaking for myself. I can tell by everything I've heard today that you understand this very well. So I'm just going to say I do support the independent ratepayer advocate and possibly the separation of two individuals. In other words, an inspector general and a ratepayer advocate, because the inspector general would look at feasibility studies, look at structure as opposed to rates. When you're talking about going out to the community, when you have to do charter reform, you have to be careful who you're sending out, because the message that's taken to you, the people about this issue, you want the community to know why you're proposing this. If you're sending the DWP out there, they're going to say they're the ratepayer advocates, and we don't need any of this. So I just want to tell you that the motions that I've seen Councilmember Smith put forward, I support all of those. Thank you.
Mr. Wilkinson? Or?
Tony Wilkinson, yes. The DWP Neighborhood Council's MOU Oversight Committee, which does exist, as you know, with a contract, best effort, of course, to get notice and disclosure. And so Neighborhood Council has been, as you know, frustrated as the council is in getting this. The ratepayer advocate is going to be one of the most wonderful things to make the MOU work for neighborhood councils and the whole community that they represent. I think that the council, in getting the independent evaluation of the ECAF through PA Consulting, is just like turns on the lights and shows what can happen when an independent, competent party shines the light on DWP. It helps us all understand the issues, and now we can actually discuss them. So thank you very much for ordering that study, and I hope it ends up being a single advocate, to tell you the truth, because I think if you separate them, which may be easier with your colleagues, it will dilute the effect.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Burke?
Barbara Money and Burke, Studio City Neighborhood Council, and this is on the record from the council. We have supported the ratepayer advocate and with a motion, and I believe a CIS. As far as whether there's an inspector general needed to, that has to be reviewed, as you said, to see. But whatever these people are, they have to be independent, totally independent, not in any political office. So I agree with that. So personally, I also, two separate things. The commission being proposed by Councilmember Smith and others, the five board members of the commission to be 2 by the mayor, 2 by the city council, and 1 by the Congress of Neighborhood Councils. I think that would be a really terrific proposal to go forward. And I did meet with the PA consultants to do with their report. I thought they were terrific and absolutely transparent to deal with. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Humperville, Diane Rosen, Michael Cohen, and Eric Sanjuro. Mr. Humperville.
My name's Jack Humphreyville, Greater Wilshire Neighborhood Council. You stole my words. DWP does not deserve a seat at the table. They do not deserve any input into this process. DWP lied. That's an ethical issue. They misled the public about the levels of the rate increases. The DWP has not supplied this committee with information about its operations, despite repeated requests by Jan Perry. DWP has not supplied the committee with written report regarding the ratepayers advocate, which was asked for on December 15th, which was promised by Mr. Friedman within 30 days. Fortunately, we've had the benefit of the independent physical review, and not only that, but we've also had the constant input and advice throughout the process. So if somebody made some statements, the PA people were there to advise and say what they thought. I think the ratepayers advocate, coupled with the transparency motions, is an excellent start to curbing this rogue department under control and stop the blatant abuse by City Hall, by the mayor and City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Rosen?
Yes, I'm Diane Rosen, Chair of the Encino Neighborhood Council Planning and Land Use. And by motion a couple of years ago, we have approved the ratepayer advocate. Councilman, as you all know, the Valley has often felt that we have not had a seat at the table and we have not been represented to downtown City Hall. As you know, there are extremes, climate extremes in the Valley that make air conditioning a necessity, and that there will be neighborhoods that will be hurt terribly by these outrageous rates. But this is not just about rates. This is about honesty and transparency. Ratepayers have the right to know why the DWP wants a 20% increase this year. Ratepayers have the right to know why rates are going to increase dramatically over the next 5 or 10 years. But right now, the Valleyites do not trust the DWP, and we need to be represented to downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen?
Yes, Michael Cohen, Reseda, also a representative of the DWP committee, and my neighborhood council voted to support an RPA. We need an RPA, ratepayer advocate, inspector general, with real powers to explore every aspect of the Department of Water and Power, because that's how the rates are generated. We need transparency. We need full public disclosure of information. The DWP has been very much an insular organization for virtually its entire existence. It brings to mind a bit of LAPD, which needed a federal consent decree to get its ship upright. I don't know if we need to go that far. Maybe we do. For instance, I can go and get a 10K on Southern California Edison and get all the information I need to make a fair objective analysis of their operations. Their property taxes and other taxes were $244 last year, $232 the year before. The DWP and the city says, well, we're going to transfer because this is in lieu of property taxes and other sales taxes, but we have no basis for comparison. We need that information open. If you think you have a tough time getting it, there's many of us here that have tried in the past, and I think you know some of those people. I think that it can't be narrowly drawn just to look at rates when they come up, because there is too much driving that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Sanjurjo?
Hi, Rick Sanjurjo, Councilmember Jose Huizar's office. He just wanted to impart that it's definitely time to move forward. It's been almost 2 years since he called for the creation of an ombudsperson position. We have till September to get something on the ballot for next year. If we are going to proceed with putting the position under the commission, the council member's preference would be that it be on the ballot. We did that with the fire department last year with the commission there. The voters approved that position. Also, some lessons we've learned from looking at other commissions. There should be a 5-year contract so the person cannot be fired. There should probably be joint reporting to this committee, so it's not just reporting to the commission. We learned that from the police department. There should be some access to information guaranteed. The powers should be written down so there's no debate or confusion about what they are allowed to do. They should have access to anything they want to look at. This will be the only policy person for the Water and Power Commission if we move forward. With this position, we should also look at the Harbor Commission's consultant. They have a retired person who works in a capacity very similar to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Prieto, those are all the speaker cards. I would like it if you just go back to the...
Sure.
What and the CAO too, I appreciate that. What I would like to do is to synthesize everything that we have heard today, the motions that you received last week, come forward with your final report. And then let's have a placeholder the same day in council, so that we can just move from the committee. We'll have a committee, and I would ask you to make this the only item that day, so we can just discuss your report and then move forward to committee. I can't even imagine that discussing the report will take that long. I don't think I've seen anything that has galvanized people like this in a very, very long time. And then we can, you can be prepared to give us the time frame so that we can have all the options before us. We decide we want to do this. Much of this has to go on the ballot because it involves charter reform. So give us the dates certain by which we have to act and have that prepared. I don't know if it's premature to ask you to come forth with some suggested ballot language. Is that too much? Is that too premature?
It could be. I guess we just have to take a look at it, although the motions did provide very specific requests. I mean, that's a good lead-in, and we could start off with that.
Okay.
I think it's simply more an issue of how to package the whole thing and then do the analysis in terms of the impacts, the pros and cons. That way you have a better idea what you want to do.
All right. Well, why don't you come with it with as much formulation as possible and put that together as our options, and so that we can choose what we want to choose, and then we'll have back-to-back committee, then council, go straight into council, and let's have those dates so that we know what our time frame is, and we can get moving on this.
Okay.
Mr. Koretz?
I may have missed it. Did you suggest a date certain by which they come back with this, like 30 days?
Yeah, I
30
thought
days?
I said 30 days, but
we could do that.
Yeah, and then let's do it where this is the only item on the committee agenda, and then get me a placeholder in council for the same day, so we can go straight from committee and go on into council.
And there may be other motions that come up in the next few days. I know there are other things that I've heard percolating out there. So if other things come from council on this subject, maybe you can wrap them all into the same.
Sure.
As long as they don't involve rate increases. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah. We could.
Okay? So we'll do that. You'll come back 30 days, placeholder in council, so we can go here and then to council.
Okay.
Okay?
Do that. Try that.
Any other? All right, we're going to go to public comment. Thank you. All right, Dr. Williams, come back up here, Chris Rowe, and Michael Cohen. This is public comment. This is where you can comment on items that are not on the agenda.
Dr. Clyde Williams, El Sereno, Northeast LA. Sierra Club, Water Committee, and a few others.
Okay.
DWP is just symptomatic of many departments. And we're right now involved with the Bureau of Sanitation and the Stormwater Program, and with the Bureau of Engineering working in conjunction with the Department of Transportation on the San Fernando road widening. The problem is there's no transparency. The problem is that there's no outreach to the communities that are going to have to support these facilities for the next 50 years. We don't know where they're going, what they're going to do. My classic is DWP doesn't have a strategic plan after 2 years. Well, Department of Transportation doesn't have a strategic plan either, and the Bureau of Sanitation for Stormwater does not have a strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Chris Rowe.
Chris Rowe, I'm going to speak to you on behalf of the disabled. I want you to know in your motions, it talks about low income and it talks about disabled. And when you look at me, you don't see someone that's disabled, but I want you to know that I have chronic health issues that require me to wear wool socks and heavy boots and thermal underwear in the middle of the summer. And so I'm saying this to you because when we're talking about the LADWP, there is no function whatsoever that addresses someone that's not like literally on life support. In other words, if someone has a chronic illness and you call them, because this is what I did a few weeks ago, because I'm already in Tier 2 and I'll hit Tier 3 in the summer. I'm on Tier 2 right now because I have to keep the temperature of my home in the room that I'm in over 80 degrees. I have to take longer showers to keep me warm. So, and I'm sitting here freezing, I want you to know. So I want you to think in terms of that's another issue that needs to be addressed is maybe a new form that allows people with health problems to have a different level allotment. Okay. And I want you to know that the gas company does allow that for specific illnesses, and DWP doesn't. Your apartment,
If you want to get me a copy of what the gas company uses for its own,
Yeah.
go ahead and email it to me.
okay, sure,
Okay?
I will. Thank you so much.
jan.perry@lacity.org.
Yes.
You can always ask Dr. Williams. He knows how to.
You get stuff from me all the time. I guess somebody
Okay,
else,
find me.
Jeff is probably reading it.
Probably reading it right now. Mr. Cohen.
Yes, Michael Cohen, Reseda. Just real quickly, I gave you a second spreadsheet that was from the EIA, Energy Information Agency of Department of Energy, which shows that the Southern California Edison has about 4 1/3 times the revenue and about 3 1/4 times the number of customers as DWP has, and they paid $244 million in property and other taxes. Now, that doesn't include return on investment and other items, but we're left in kind of the dark with the DWP. The mantra is we're transferring the $220 million or so because the city doesn't pay taxes or to the state. Based on their relative size, they would pay about $50 or $60 million. Now, we don't know if that's true or not. That's a back of an envelope calculation, which is precisely the reason that we need an Inspector General RPA. What is the value of the property and what's a fair amount? I happen to think that the transfer can be very good for the city of Los Angeles, but I think we have to reassure myself and as well as others that it's a fair amount because it's gone from 5% under Mayor Hahn, suddenly zips up to 7% with our latest mayor. No disrespect, but now it's 8%. That just doesn't make sense. That is really not a fair way of appraising, because this is after all a hidden tax. Maybe it's justified, but nonetheless, we do have to justify. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and that marks the end of our public comment period and the end of our meeting, and I appreciate your patience and your attendance, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.